In this video, I'll be referring to templates and forms. You can access these forms by clicking on the link on the screen or in the description of this video.
Hello, welcome to the Power Hour on credit. Now credit, wow, this is a loaded topic. In class, this can go on for 45 minutes to an hour sometimes. People have a lot of questions around credit, and there's a lot of misinformation out there as well. So I'm really going to try to focus in on just the real specific details about credit, what it means to build credit, have credit, and what builds your credit score. A lot of misinformation out there. Let's try to clear some of that up today. So, learning the rules of the game. So what is credit? Credit really is a game of risk, right? If someone is going to extend you credit, say you go to a department store and get a credit card, they're giving you credit, they're giving you the ability to charge money, and they don't even know if they're ever going to get paid back, and sometimes they don't, right? But there's advantages and disadvantages to credit. Let's think of some of the advantages to credit. And we have it here on your handout, first page there. There's a list there, but if you were to think about it, what are some of the advantages to having credit, right? Well, I just went on vacation and checked into a hotel, and what's the first thing they want? A credit card. You need a credit card when you're traveling. Online, you want to make a purchase? Credit cards. You can use your debit card sometimes or take from your checking, but a lot of times you need credit. And it's great to have a credit card. Sometimes you may need to make a big purchase of a very expensive item. It's great if you have credit because you can purchase a big expensive item and then pay it off over time. There are advantages to having credit. A lot here and a lot I'm sure you're going to think of yourself. But there are some disadvantages to having credit as well. Oftentimes when people have credit, they tend to buy things they maybe don't need. Also, when you have a credit card in your pocket, you can charge something and just start building up debt, which is something we're going to talk a little bit about in a Power Hour of debt. There are disadvantages to credit. The problems that people get into can lead to very negative things like bankruptcy because they accumulate so much debt on these credit cards and they can't pay them back. There's also a big key element to that. When you're looking to purchase a home, how much debt you have, how much you've got on all these credit cards, your monthly bills that you're paying, impacts how much you can afford in a home. But let's talk about credit specifically now. If you look at page 2, it does impact the way you can borrow money. And with credit, you get, here we've got an example of different interest rates, how it affects the monthly payment you're going to have. If any of you have ever looked at buying a car, you probably know that your credit score has impacted how much you can get an interest rate for on your car loan, and that makes your payment go up and down. Here's an example of 4% rate, right? A monthly payment could be $836. You go up to a 10%, now you're at $1,500. So your credit score does impact your ability to borrow money wisely. What's important to realize is that when I talk to people about credit, oftentimes they say, oh, I look at my credit all the time. And when I say, do you really look at your credit all of the time? And they say, yes, I do. And what they tell me is, well, my credit card company tells me what my score is. And I say, that's not your credit. That's your credit score number. If I were to ask you, how much do you weigh? And you say, I weigh 165. I think that's a really good weight. But your doctor could come in and tell me, yeah, but they have high blood pressure, their cholesterol's out of control. And that's what your credit is like. You can have a good credit score number, but that doesn't tell us what your credit actually is. So it's important that we review our credit. So credit, few definitions here. There are financial institutions out there, right, that extend you credit with the agreement that you're going to pay them back with interest. And these are the creditors, right? And if you look at your credit report, they'll all be listed on your credit report. You know, Visa, MasterCard, the department stores, your car loan, the various kinds of creditors out there. There's also companies that collect the information on your consumer credit history, and those are Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. And you probably know those as the credit bureaus. The credit bureaus are really just computers, right? They're computers. They gather up information on you, and then they feed it to this, it's called a credit report. And that's what you want to look at. Now, if you've never really looked at your credit report, there's one place you can go that we recommend highly here, and that is annualcreditreport.com. A few years back, Elizabeth Warren and Obama said, believe it or not, years ago, you didn't have access to your credit. People would look at your credit to decide if they're going to give you a credit card or a car loan or a mortgage. People would be looking at your credit and making a decision about you, and we had no access. So the government decided that you should be able to look at your credit anytime you want to. And we recommend you go to annualcreditreport.com. It's a law now that each of those 3 credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, by law have to give you a credit report, 1 free report a year. We say, pick a date. Maybe it's your birthday. Maybe you like New Year's resolutions and so you want to do it on the first of the year. But just go to annualcreditreport.com. You'll answer a few questions that they'll verify it's you and just pull your credit. Now, there's the key, pull your credit. This isn't a ding on your credit. This is you looking at your own information. So it's totally free and it doesn't ding your credit. It's not a hard pull. So it's not going to impact your credit score. People get very worried about that. Don't be worried about it. You can also call them or you could write to them as well. What are you going to see on your credit report? Why are we encouraging you to go there? Because you can, your credit card bill has your number. That's great, you have the number, but it doesn't tell you what's on your report. And this is key information you want to know. There's a lot of information listed on page 3 here, reviews what you're going to see in your credit report. So your name is going to be there, right? It's going to have your Social Security. It's going to have a listing of jobs that you've had. It's going to have a past address information because this is all ways that they verify you and the where you've worked, where you've lived impacts, the information that's on your credit report. You're going to see a lot of things. I show people their credit report because that's one of the first things we do here at Homewise is we review people's credit with them. You're going to see like an old, department store credit card that you opened when you were a kid. But if you treated that card well, right? You opened the account, you didn't abuse the credit, you always paid on time. That little credit card record is still going to be on your report. But what's important is you want to see what's listing is active because what's going to list on your credit report are all of your open and active accounts that you have. If you have a car loan, if you have a bank loan, your student loans are all going to be listed on there. Even if they're in deferment, right? The student loans are going to be listed and then also all of the credit cards that you have. And hopefully you don't have that many. But when you're reviewing your report, you want to make sure that everything listing on the report is yours. If I was to pull my credit at annualcreditreport.com and all of a sudden I was to see that there's a credit card at Victoria's Secret or Home Depot and it's got this huge balance on it, I'd be like, I don't have that credit card. I could dispute with the credit card companies and with Annual Credit Report and say like there's somebody else has my information or something. This is not my information. So that's why you want to review your actual report. Another thing that'll be listed on there are inquiries, right? Whenever Homewise, if we pull your credit to analyze if we can give you a mortgage or not, or when you go and you're out in a department store and they say, hey, would you like to save 20% today? All you have to do is apply for a credit card. They're going to show up there because they're going to pull your credit. You want to look at the inquiries that are listing on your credit report. Who's been looking at your information? Again, those inquiries, you want to review that and you could see like, oh, if there's, a department store you've never been to, or if there's a name of a bank that you don't know who this is, you want to see who is looking at your credit. This is key. That's why you want to go to Annual Credit Report and look at that information. Now, let's talk about, they gather up all this information, right? Some of you may have heard the term FICO, which refers to 2 gentlemen, the Fair Isaac gentlemen. So Fair Isaac, they combined this company. They said, we're FICO, we're going to create this company. And they created variables that create your credit score. They put in all these mathematical equations that create your credit score. And let's look at this. So on page 4, this is a lot of key information that people don't know and they don't share that's really vital to know. On here, kind of in the middle, you'll see, what is a credit score? What's a good credit score? People think, oh, I have great credit or I have bad credit. They're just looking at their score. So scores go from 350 to 850. 350 to 850 is the general range for credit scores. But what would be a good credit score? Actually, what lenders look for, a minimum credit score in order for you to obtain a mortgage is a 620. Homewise, we say you really want it to be 640. 640 is a nice, good, strong credit score because when you're in the lending process, if your score goes up and down, if you're just at 620, you could get kicked out of your loan. So it's important to build up to at least a 640. That's a nice, healthy credit score. When you have a 640 credit score, you're going to get approved for a mortgage and you should be safe through the loan process. 640 is good. So if 640 is good, what do you think very good credit is? What do you think a number would be? It's not as high as you think. Just when you get to 700, that's very good credit. 700 is very good. Now, excellent credit. What do you think excellent credit is? Well, if it goes to 850, you think, well, it's got to be 800, 850. It's not. A 740 score. 740 score is excellent credit. I always joke, anything over 740 and you're just showing off. It's not important. If you have 740s, you're doing good. So people now, they're so into their credit scores and they want to up them and up them and up them and they think, how do I do that? Well, here's the easy way to up your credit. The first thing is you want to make sure that you have strong, active credit, which means you have to have a credit card. And if you have an auto loan, that's great as well. But there needs to be activity on your credit report. You need to have established credit. You need a credit card. Now, what you can do is, if you've never had credit before, if you're a young person watching this video, welcome, so glad you're here. It's important to know if you need to build credit, you can go talk to your bank and you can say, I'm trying to establish credit, and they'll say, let's get you a secured credit card. And then what they're going to do is they're going to take about $300 from your savings account, so you'll need to save up some money. They'll take $300 and they'll freeze that money and they'll give you a credit card for you to use to establish credit. After about a year, they unfreeze that money back into your savings account, and then they turn that credit card into a regular credit card. So here's the key thing to building good, strong credit. We're going to look, there's a little graph here at the bottom. What's the number one thing that you see there? 35% of your credit score, 35% of your score is based upon your payment history. Are you paying on time? That's the number one thing in life to build strong credit, is paying your bills on time. That's the number one key. 35% of your score is based on paying on time. So sometimes people are a day or two late. How does that impact you? If you're a day or two late paying your credit card bill, they're probably going to charge you about $25, $35 in a fee. They could raise your interest rate on you, but they're not going to be tattletales. They're not going to call up the credit bureaus and say this person was late. It's just a day or two. So it does impact you because it could raise your interest rate, but it doesn't impact your credit score yet. A late payment is once you are 30 days late on your credit card payment. Because once you're 30 days late, essentially one little computer brain, the credit card computer brain, contacts the other computers, the credit bureaus, and it says, this person owes me 2 payments. And I don't know if I'm ever going to get my money again. They freak out. The credit bureaus are then going to penalize you for this late payment, for being 30 days late. You haven't made your payment. You owe 2 payments. They're going to penalize you. How many points do you think you could lose off your credit score for being late? If you were to guess. There are a lot of answers, but the correct one is up to 100 points. 100 points off of your credit score because you have this late payment. Sometimes it's 80, it can fluctuate a little bit, but it's up to 100 points you're going to lose off of your credit score for a late payment. So paying your bills on time, early is great. Sometimes people say, can you pay early? Yes, pay early, but always pay your bills on time. 35% of your score. The next thing, 30%, is how much do you owe? On my desk at work, I have a jar of candy, right? And I always say, if I were to offer you a piece of candy, and you opened the jar and you took a piece of candy, I would think, good person, nice person. If I said, go ahead, have some candy, and you took the jar and you dumped the whole thing in your purse or pocket, I would think not too highly of you. I'd think like, why are you taking all the candy? That's how the credit bureaus think about you and how you use your money. How much you owe is 30% of your score. So let's talk about that a little bit. If somebody gives you a credit card, that first credit card you're going to get, you're going to have a $300 limit, right? The rule of thumb is you want to keep your cards, your credit cards, below 30%. That's what you want to think of as your limit. I always tell people when you get your credit cards, after you've watched this video, open up your wallet, get all your credit cards out, see what your limit is that they say your limit is, and in pen, write 30% on that card. So in this example here, 30% of 300 is $90. You don't want that card ever to be over $90. Now here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying spend $90 a month. I'm saying you don't want that card to ever to go over $90. If you have a $500 card, it should never be over $150, right? If you have a department store credit card or a big business, I don't want to get into trouble and mention any names on things, but I like a certain place with a bullseye as their logo. But I love to shop there, right? But I use a debit card there. That's key. Use a debit card, don't use a credit card. But a lot of times they give you a really large limit. Why? Because they want you to put a lot of money on that credit card. Why? Because they make a lot of interest. But you know that's going to lower your credit score. You don't want a high balance. If you've got 500, 150, 1,000, 300, if it's a $2,000 card, shouldn't be over $600. But again, I'm not saying you don't want to charge that much on there, but that should be your limit in order to get a better credit score. Keep your balances low. The best bet when you get a credit card, you've established this credit card, is just use it for, say, gas, right? You're just going to put your gas on there every month. And then every month, pay off the credit card in full, if you can. Now, if you're in a situation where you can't pay it off in full, you know what? Don't use that credit card next month. Keep that balance, and when the bill comes due again next month, pay it off in full at that time. And then you can use that credit card again. The best thing is just to use it for a small amount and to be able to pay it off. A way to play the system, right? A way to work credit and make it work for you is take your credit card and figure out what your limit is. And if you've got 300, I can only go to 90. So maybe I have Hulu or Netflix or some small monthly bill I pay every month anyway. This is something I pay every month. I'm going to put that on my credit card. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my credit card website and I'm going to say, look, pay this bill in full every month from my checking account so I don't have to worry about it. That card's going to get used and paid, right? You're going to have that 35% payment history, paying on time. 30% of your score is that you don't go over your limit. This is a nice small monthly amount I'm using, keeps it nice and low, so that's adding to your credit score. And the thing is you're using it and paying it and you don't have to think about it. If you have a larger credit card, you might do your cell phone bill. That's something you can put on there as well. That's a good way to utilize your credit cards and not get into trouble. There's next thing is 15% of your credit score is based upon history. History is very, very important. When you first establish that credit card, if you don't have a credit score right now and you first get your credit card, you might go to look at and try to get a credit score and it's going to say NA. NA. Because the computers don't have enough information to give you a credit score yet. So it's not like you have bad credit, you just don't have any yet, which is good. It's better to have, nothing than to have bad credit. But what's going to happen over time, a couple of months will go by, and whoever you got the credit card from is going to report to the credit bureaus your activity, your balance, your payment, your limits, and all that kind of information. And then the bureaus will analyze the information and generate a credit score. So usually it'll take maybe about 3 to 6 months for this really to show up on your report. Usually we see it around 3 months, but it could take up to 6. But the thing is, it's still brand new. I always say it's like someone handing you a baby. People want to analyze your history with an account. So generally speaking, lenders like here at Homewise, when we try to get a mortgage approval for you, it's going to take about a year, at least a year of consistent payment history to really generate a nice, strong score and strong credit. Two things, strong credit score, strong credit. They're different. Now, other impacts to your score, over time, as you get older, you accumulate different kinds of loans, like I said, in student loans, and maybe an installment loan. Different loans are going to appear, auto loans and things like that. And it does impact your credit. 10% of your score is the types of credit that you have. But the other thing is there's 10% which is new credit. This is something you want to be careful of. 10% of your score is based upon how much new credit you have. And when you get all these new credit cards, it happens around the holidays, right? You go out and people want you to sign up for a credit card to get a discount off of your purchase on that day. But the more if you get all those inquiries on your account and you've accumulated all of these new credit cards, that is a warning sign to the credit bureaus that you're asking all these people for money. It's kind of a red flag, so you have to be careful about that. So that amount of new credit, having all these new accounts can impact you negatively. That's what when people worry about those dings or hard pulls. That's really what it is if you start accumulating all this debt. You really don't need any more than about 3 credit cards. It's kind of the magic number, 3 accounts, and maybe that's an auto loan and 2 credit cards. That's the magic number. It's not like the more credit cards you get, the better you look to the credit bureaus. It's actually the opposite. If you start accumulating all these credit cards, it can really hurt you in the beginning. Now, if you're 90 years old and you've had those cards for 60 years, you've been paying on them, yeah, you're probably going to have excellent credit because you've been maintaining them for a long time. But in the initial building of credit, don't go out and get a lot of credit cards. That's not going to help you. 2 credit cards is fine. 3 max is good enough to go on. So those are some of the things to have your credit score. Now, it's really important if you have the ability to come into Homewise and visit us. We'd love to sit down and review your credit and answer your more specific questions for you, talk about collections and things like that with you. It's really key to look at the information and sit down with somebody who can guide you through the process a little simpler. But here's some main tips, is pay your bills on time, right? And only borrow what you can comfortably afford to pay back, right? That's why I said if you're using your credit card, ideally you should be able to pay it off every month. Now, we talked earlier, one of the advantages of a credit card is maybe you're going to buy a big screen TV. Therefore, that's going to take you a few months to pay that back and pay it off, and that's great. But you don't want to keep charging on that credit card if you're still just making monthly payments. Stop using those credit cards. And contact your lender if you're going to be late. This is key. I talked about if you're a day or 2 late, call up your credit card company, because remember, they're just computers talking to other computers. But if you're going to be late on your payment, if you call up that credit card company and talk to a human being, you say, oh, my check did come through, or whatever it is, I'm a little bit late. It's good that they have that information, and you might even be able to convince them not to raise your interest rate. Or if you were a few days late, maybe you were on vacation, calling them up and explaining what happened, you might say, oh, I'm so sorry. And they can look at your report, they look at your credit, and they see you always pay on time. And so they will say, oh, we'll put your interest rate back. There's ways around it. Check your credit report for inaccuracies. Like I said, go to annualcreditreport.com once a year, pull your credit, get all of the information that's there, and make sure everything on your report is actually yours. We have actually seen it where people share the same name and credit can get mixed up, and that has a big impact on you. And then beware of fraud. So protect your Social Security card and your credit cards. I always say, I do have a couple of credit cards, and they're all set up. One pays my homeowner's security system, so then I just pay it off in 3 monthly installments. So, that gets used. But I don't have that credit card anymore. It's at the bank in a safe deposit box. So you can keep it in a safe deposit box. Never carry your Social Security card around. That's huge. Your Social Security card should be locked up in a safe place. Again, for me, I do have a safe deposit box. It's like $25 a year. It's not that big a deal. But you want to protect your credit. Now we have some more information about credit here, and going into detail about your credit score. If you do have credit issues, right, here's the thing to remember, is the law is on your side. I highly recommend that maybe you come in and talk to us if you need more help, but there's an example of a dispute letter. Now, sometimes people will tell you they're trying to help you fix your credit, and they say, oh, we'll just dispute all those bills, and they have to take them off. No, that's not the way it works. If you owe somebody money, you need to pay them back their money. Now, if there's something fraudulent on your account, you should dispute that. Now, when you go to Annual Credit Report, you can actually do that right on the website. You could dispute the information there. But you can also write to the credit bureaus. And in your handout, you'll see there on page 7, there's the addresses for the credit bureaus. You just need to give them a copy of your credit report. So you'll have to have a copy of the page you're talking about and the account you're talking about that you're disputing, and you send that off to them. Now, you're sending some personal information through the mail, so we always recommend, go to the post office, make sure you get delivery confirmation, because you're sending some personal information through the mail, so you do want to be careful. But that is credit in a nutshell. Like I said, we could talk more and more about credit. I could give you some credit tips, and I'd love for you to come and do a class here, spend a full day with us. But for now, that's the basic information about credit. Hope you learned something. Give us a call if you have questions you want to ask, and thank you so much for joining us today.